You want to make sure that you have ownership of those documents. I had a client who was paying a marketing team $12,000 a month to create, run, manage, and operate his ad funnel and for 2 of his offers. And he had ownership of none of it. None of that money. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Scenes series, where we deep dive into tools and techniques that can supercharge your online business. Could your lack of operations be leading to the failure of your business? So we're going to dive into that topic today and see if you could be setting your business up for failure without even realizing it. A couple of the number one leading reasons businesses fail is lack of funding, lack of capital, their cash flow slash operating expenses are too high, they grow too quickly and they can't support it, or there is no market demand. So a couple of those are going to tie back into this, but the market demand one, we're not going to deep dive into that too much, but we are going to look at how if your operations aren't optimized, that can lead to the problems in your cash flow. And actually having optimized operations, you are going to see better cash flow and you're going to be more proactive with it. Because what we're going to talk about today is there are several ways that you could be wasting time and money within your business and not even realize it. And it's going to all come back on a lack of operations and a lack of systems, a lack of technology, a lack of support, and just being able to be proactive in your business. I see this happen so many times. I see entrepreneurs and small businesses, even medium-sized and large-sized businesses, and I think it happens more in the larger to medium-sized businesses just because there is no synergy, there's lack of communication, which is one of the biggest things of waste that we see. And if you want to see more in detail or like a handout, a PDF, if you're more of a visual learner, you should go over to our resources page. We have our 8 wastes in business. So the e-com waste and service-based businesses. There's that PDF, but we're going to break down some ways that you could be wasting time and money today in this episode, and how, if you're wasting time and money, you could be bleeding, financially be in the red in your business and not even realize you're not going to have long-term sustainability. And 2, if you don't have these certain things in place or get them improved, if you are growing rapidly and not having a solid operational foundation, you are going to burn out, or your business is not going to be able to sustain the demand that you are getting, which is also, you are losing out on money in sales. I've had clients come to me and we implement these systems, we implement processes, we implement good team members, solid team members on their team. And one client, after we did this, she was able to land $2 million clients because she had the confidence in her systems and in her team to take on these $1 million clients. And because she had a professional onboarding, a professional customer journey, that she was able to impress and retain these clients. So that is one thing you could be missing out on, is opportunity costs, that you could be missing out on sales. You could be missing out on client opportunities, collaboration opportunities, because you are too busy being in the day-to-day of your business / you're not being efficient with your time. So a sale goes through or is missed because you're not tracking properly, or you don't respond quick enough. And there's automations that could have been in place that would have helped save that sale, which leads to the first one, is inefficient workflows. So if you have a lack of streamlined processes, if there's confusion, there can be delays. That's a lot of wasted time, and a lot could potentially be wasted resources. So you need to think about, how much am I paying for help? If you are delegating, how much of the time are you wasting? Because a lot of entrepreneurs and service providers forget to factor in their rate that they could be wasting on certain things if they're doing redundant tasks or duplications because of errors, which also leads into the second point of manual data entry. When you do data entry, which I see so many entrepreneurs doing this, there are so many tools available. Zapier is one of them. If you haven't watched our intro to Zapier video, go back to the channel. I did that one a couple of weeks ago. You could be utilizing the Zapier to reduce any manual data entry, because when it's done manually, it can increase the risk of errors, and it takes up unnecessary time that could have been done elsewhere. And if you are paying a VA potentially, I know most people, there are people here who say, I pay $5 an hour. Okay, how great is that person? How many errors is that person creating? Because you get what you pay for. So you could potentially be wasting anywhere from $5 an hour to $25 an hour, depending on what you're paying for your support, when you could do a automation and an integration that will manually or automatically update the data. And then that person can be utilizing their skills for something that requires actual personal touch. And that's going to be a way better use of that resource. Ineffective communication is another one when you don't have your operations optimized, because there could be confusion on what channels to use. And I see this a ton in service-based and remote teams. They don't know where to chat about something. There's communication happening everywhere. There's no one streamlined place for client communication, and that's causing a bunch of confusion and causes a lot of time spent like clarifying information. Where basically I've seen teams playing telephone, because the client says it's something to them in one channel, and then we're having to then flow that information to one team, because a lot of the times the teams I work on, that's a big thing that they don't have, is a communication policy or a standard communication policy for clients, which is very, very crucial. And it just leads to a whole bunch of wasted time. And again, that goes back to time equals money. So whenever we're wasting time, we're wasting money somewhere. Having a lack of automation, this is another big one I see in clients, is they're just doing repetitive tasks, or they're taking up so much mental time trying to remember all these tasks, instead of utilizing a project management tool to automate reoccurring tasks, or they are not utilizing automation to just complete these tasks. This goes back to the data entry point that we just brought up, that you are just wasting so much time, so much mental energy, and it also can be what is leading to high employee turnover, because they're not happy. They're doing stuff that they don't want to be doing. It's just a waste of their talent. So that kind of leads into a later point that I was going to talk about, but I'm going to just bring it up now, is higher employee turnover. So if you are having them do redundant tasks, or they're not sure what they need to be doing, it just leads to them being unhappy on your team. So lack of automation is a big one that we see in a lot of teams, that is causing a lot of waste and a lot of time and a lot of money. So there's also inadequate resource allocation, because they just don't have any visibility into this. I see a lot of remote teams who don't know where their resources are going, how many hours. They don't look at the data of what's getting done versus how many hours are being spent. So they don't have any idea that resources are being misallocated or underutilized, and that's causing them to waste money and have unnecessarily high expenses, because they just don't look at that. Or they don't have a way to track that. In ClickUp, we set this up for a lot of clients. If you are having team members time track, you can track that a little bit easier. And ClickUp has widgets and dashboard features that will help you track, time versus tasks. There's reports that we can pull based on client or based on project of what resources were spent where, to get us a better cost budget breakdown, and help us create time estimates for certain tasks. So to be really, really optimized, the best teams that I've seen have good time estimates, and then they are also tracking time to that task. So they can track the discrepancies in time estimated versus time spent. Even if they're not billing by hour, that'll help get you better insight into that resource allocation. Also, it's also going to help with better project management, because poor project management will cause missed deadlines, scope creep, costs are going up because we're not managing those, we're not forecasting, or even tracking that information, because people think it's not necessary, but then they end up having they end up actually losing money on jobs, because they don't know how much time actually goes into it, and they're just putting out a number, and they end up spending way more time than they actually estimated. So the cost of the project, it goes way above what they were actually paid. So you're losing money on that project. Another thing is, kind of already touched upon this, is reactive problem solving. So if you don't have visibility into the processes and your team, you're going to be in a reactive state, which is going to potentially end up resulting in issues or money loss, time loss. A lot of the times I see this with customer experiences because they weren't on top of the project or they weren't on top of the scope. A client asks for a refund, or a client is unhappy, so they lose money on future sales, or they just have to give a refund, which is a huge hassle and a huge headache for a lot of service providers. So when you have these things documented and planned out and have a visual on, you can be proactive instead of saying like, oh, I'm sorry, that fell under my radar. So that kind of goes back to the project management piece. If you have a clear scope of work, you have that laid out, you're going to be more proactive with your problem solving. And then I'm going to go through the list, even though we talked about some of this. So without organization and having your operations optimized, you could be having potentially unnecessary meetings because you're just trying to hash things out. I see this happen a lot on remote teams, that things that could have been handled outside of a meeting are happening in a meeting because they don't have designated spots for something. There's those miscommunications happening via Slack or in the project management tool, things were missed. So then we're wasting time in meetings instead of being productive and fulfilling on the scopes of work. Documents are disorganized. I see this a ton with, I feel like I've said that a lot this episode, but that's what we work on a lot, is helping them with documentation. People can't find stuff, especially when you're using Google Drive or a remote cloud-based system. People might not know where to find things or how the hierarchy works. And especially with Google Workspace, if you have contractors or team members who are saving things on their own personal drive, you might not have access to it or ownership. I see this happen with my clients all the time, and I want to warn you about this. If you are paying a contractor or you're paying someone to create assets, products, information, anything in a spreadsheet, in a document, you want to make sure that you have ownership of those documents. I had a client who was paying a marketing team $12,000 a month to create, run, manage, and operate his ad funnel and for 2 of his offers. And he had ownership of none of it. None of that money. If he would to leave or part ways with that company, he would not have had any of those assets. He would have been starting from square one. All that money would have been basically down the drain. So you need to make sure you have ownership of the documentation that is being worked on for you. And whether that be in your Google Workspace, you should have a copy of that. Getting your documentation organized is so crucial as an online-based business owner. Another one is, if your team is not clear, this goes back to the project management and not having that visibility or not being proactive. You could have team members duplicating efforts. So if everyone's working in a silo, there's no transparency, there's no visibility in the project management or in the work, then your team members could be wasting time and resources because of duplicating efforts. And then you're underutilizing technology. So if you're not leveraging technology in your business, it could just be you missing out on the full potential of the max, what you can do for the business. So you could just be having inefficiencies. You could be, like I said before, losing out on sales because you aren't capitalizing on softwares that can help you with those client journeys and getting people the information that they need right away, because people expect things very fast and now in our day and age. So you want to be making sure that you're including that in your client experience, in your customer journeys, whether it just like even just an email that says, hey, we got your submission, we'll be back to you. Like, they want to know what's next. They don't want to be kept waiting. So making sure you include that. But I know that was a lot. We covered a lot of these in detail in the 8 waste resource that we have on our resource page. If you feel like you are stuck and you cannot identify these wastes on your own because maybe you're too in the weeds of your business, please reach out to us on a discovery call. I'm happy to provide you with some feedback into this. We do offer process sessions on how to identify these types of ways and help get you back on track, so that you aren't wasting money in your business, because with the amount of money that you could be or potentially wasting, both time and money wise, it could lead to your business going under. It could lead to your burnout. It could lead to ultimately the crumbling of your business because you don't have these things in place. Even if you try to scale, it's just not going to work. This is not to scare you. This can be remedied. This can be fixed. I've seen a lot of businesses come back from burnout, from the brink, by implementing some of these things. But here at Elf Operations, we want to make sure you are being proactive, and we are not letting you get to that sense of burnout. We want to see more entrepreneurs thrive without hitting that burnout phase, because we know it's possible by implementing proper operations in your business.